Hi there, I'm David Fox from JPY, Archiware's partner in the UK, and this video is going to take you through the procedure for upgrading Prestore to version 5.1, which is the current version as of now, May 2014, and you can upgrade to this version from Prestore 4, and you need to be running Prestore 4.4 in order to upgrade to P5. Therefore, if you're not running Prestore 4.4 currently, you'll need to first upgrade to 4.4 by downloading an installer from the Archiware website. Just to show you quickly, if you go to archiware.com in your favorite web browser and go to the download page, although this initially just shows you 5 installers, 5.1.3 being the current version, if you click on Prestore 4 here at the top, you can grab 4.4.13 for your chosen platform here and upgrade yourself to 4.4 first. So in the other tab here you can see I'm running 4.4.11, which isn't quite bang up to date, but that should be fine for this upgrade because it is 4.4. So I'm going to log in as P5 demo, which is my admin user, and initially what I'll do is I'll just demonstrate to you that this is a 4.4 installation and show you the indexes and things that are going to be carried across to the new version 5.1, and then we'll upgrade it using this 5.1.3 installer on the desktop, and then you'll see the things that you need to take care of after an upgrade and the things you need to be aware of and so on and so forth. Okay, so this P4 installation has got some configuration already, so there are some volumes. There's a backup plan, so there are some backups that have been performed on this installation, and backup to go and archive are largely unaffected by the upgrade, so I don't need to go into any detail on those, but the archive plan which exists here has been used to do some archiving, and consequently under restore, under backup, we have a backup index for localhost, which will be familiar to you if you're a P4 user. And in this index you can see there's not a great deal of backups have gone on, but there's a backup of a users admin library folder, so there's a bunch of folders that were backed up a while back there. And under archive there's the familiar default archive index, and there's some archiving that took place, and there's a bunch of sample pictures, and there's some previews associated with them. So basically I just want to illustrate that there is some data in indexes here, and then we'll see how that's affected by the upgrade and what needs to be done. So before you proceed with the upgrade, it's a good idea to take a complete copy of your current product's Archiware installation directory and put that to one side in case anything goes wrong. It's unlikely that you'll need to go back to that backup, but it's always a good piece of general practice to take a backup of something first. But having said that, the Archiware folder, if all of the indexes are contained within it, might be quite large, so you might need to take some extra steps in order to find enough storage to take a copy of it. Now at the end of the video I'll provide a link to a page which provides more info on how you would go about making a complete backup. I'm going to leave that for now because it's kind of outside of the scope of this video. So the first thing I'm going to do is just double click on the DMG file on the desktop and let that mount up, and then I get my P513 disk image here. Now I'm running 10.9 OS here, so pick the right folder for your OS, and obviously you might be doing this on Windows, in which case you'd be running the Windows installer. So into the 10.8 folder, and I'm going to run the regular package installer and click through to allow this to start and begin the upgrade process from P4 to P5. And with the password, various files are overwritten, and then the delay at the end is the new version starting up. When you install Archiware, by default you always get a couple of desktop of shortcuts to the web interface placed on the desktop, which you see appear here, and the admin web interface page is automatically opened for you following the installation of P5, and if we just click back to the installer and close it, the installation was successful. So what do we see? It says welcome to Archiware P5, so this is the new version running, and there's a help page displayed initially which you can dismiss, so you don't have to keep seeing it each time you log in, but You might want to pause the video if you want to read through that, but I'm going to go through each of these steps with you now. So I'm going to click continue. And largely you'll find the web interface, if you're familiar with P4, will look pretty much the same. For example, our backup plan still exists as before. The volume still exists, same goes for archive. Our archive plan still exists. So there's no need to do anything with the configuration of your plans except for a couple of notes that I'll mention at the end. Now if we go to restore, this is where the things that you need to take care of will be found. So if we go to backup first of all, you will see that there are now two sections with all of your clients will be listed under both. So if you had 4 different clients that you were backing up, you'll see those 4 clients will appear at the top here under backup index and at the bottom under version 4 backup indexes. Now if I go browse my version 4 backup indexes, what I'm seeing here is basically the indexes for the backups that were taken prior to the upgrade. So everything in here should be the same as it was before we upgraded, and that means that you can use the version 4 backup index and go locate what you're interested in restoring and trigger a restore of that data, and that will be pulled back from tape or disk just as it was previously. Now the different part is at the top here where we have backup index. Now this is where the new P5 backup indexes live, and initially these indexes will be empty, and all new backups that you now take using the P5 product version will go into the backup indexes at the top. So the general idea is that you will now take a full backup. In fact, it's a requirement now, having upgraded, that you have to do a full backup, even if you do an incremental backup, because this index is empty. Everything needs to be backed up in order to populate this index, this database, with the data that's on the machines and the disks that you're backing up. So the first point to note is that after upgrading to P5, the first important point is that you will need to take full backups in all of your backup plans in order to proceed. Once those full backups have completed, then you can continue and take incremental backups as before. But you may need to make sure that you have enough tapes and enough time to complete full backups following the upgrade. So you probably don't want to do the upgrade on a weekday perhaps, because you're not going to have time for the full backups to complete. The one thing to note is that whilst when browsing the P5 backup indexes, it's possible to use the search button at the top here and perform a search within those indexes. Search is not available on the P4 backup indexes, so you will have to browse through the index structure in order to locate what you want to restore. You can't do a search in there. But what will happen, of course, is that as days and weeks progress, the tapes containing your P4 backup will naturally become recycled, and therefore the P4 backup index over time should empty as you're recycling tapes, and the P5 backup indexes at the top will contain more and more backup cycles. So the contents of your indexes will effectively migrate from the older P4 indexes to the new P5 indexes. So that's what you need to think about with the backup indexes. Now let's flick to archive. And it's worth noting at this point actually that the reason that the backup indexes and the archive indexes need you to convert or create new indexes from scratch is because the P5 products have migrated the indexes into a new SQL-lite database format, which is both allows for smaller databases and is also faster. Okay, so now looking at the archive index, we see that we have a version 4 archive index, just this one here, and there's a note that the database needs to be converted before you can use that index again. So before you can either do restores or actually write to the index, you need to convert it. Now archive indexes can be quite large depending upon how many files have been archived into them. So you may need to allow some time for this conversion process to happen. And the amount of time that you need for that conversion to take place depends on the number of entries in the index, how fast your CPU and your disk is on your server. So it's really not easy for me to predict at this point how long that might take. Right, so there's a button here, please convert to P5. This button takes me to the Manage Indexes section down here on the left hand side, which is normally hidden away under Advanced Options. Once we're in Manage Indexes, we can see both the backup indexes, and we can also see our default archive index at the top, which has the convert button next to it. So if you only have a single archive index, then there's only one to convert, but if you have several, you'll need to run this convert process for each, and I would recommend that you do them one at a time to avoid Archiware trying to access too many files on disk at the same time. So clicking the convert button brings up this convert database structure window, and from here the software tells us that this is the path to the archive index that we're going to convert. It tells me how much free space I have on the disk where Archiware is installed and the amount of space that's required. So this is important because you'll need to check that there's enough space on the disk to accommodate the converted archive index, whilst the original archive index will also be retained. So if you've got a 100 gigabyte archive index, you'll need another 100 gigabytes worth of space to store the converted index. Later on, when everything has been converted and everything's working okay, it's possible to go back and delete the old indexes, but the software doesn't do that for you by default, so you'll need to be aware that some additional storage space is going to be required. You'll note that my archive index is tiny, so the convert process is going to be pretty much instantaneous here. So we click the convert button, tells me that the job has been scheduled to run the conversion. The monitor button appears. If I click the monitor button, the familiar job monitor window is shown, and you can see there are no jobs running at the top because the job is completed, and appears at the bottom, the green light indicating it was successful, converted the archive index, and I can double click on that just to get a bit more information about what happened. So you'll see a fairly minimal number of entries in the database there. So that done, we can now go back to restore an archive, and pretty much as it was in P4, you see the archive index, and we can browse it, we can search it, we can view the gallery, everything works as it did before, and the index now being converted allows us to write new archive data to it. Okay, so we've upgraded, we've taken care of the conversion of the archive index, and we're now aware that new indexes are created for backups. What else do we need to think about? Right, first thing to think about following the upgrade, in fact you should really be thinking about this before upgrading, is licenses. Now, I'm running on a demo license here, so this isn't an issue for me, but a live customer installation will be running on genuine keys, and you'll need to check via your portal login that you're entitled to run version 5. Basically, the P5.0 was released on the 30th of March 2013. So if you have a product that was in support on that date, then you'll be entitled to run P5 and therefore P5.1. So it's quite simple. If support lapsed before that date, then you will need to purchase an upgrade in order to be able to run P5. But bear in mind that all licenses are sold with a year's support, certainly in the UK. So if your license was purchased a year before March last year, then you'll still be entitled. But basically what you need to do is visit the Archiware website, log in to the portal. There's a link at the top of the Archiware website. Log in, look at your licenses, and the portal will tell you the latest version that you're entitled to run. Bear in mind it might be necessary to recalculate your keys if you've renewed support since you last generated keys in the portal, in order for the keys to be up to date and therefore able to activate the P5 version of the product. Another thing to check via the Archiware website is the operating system requirements. So if you visit the download page for P5, you'll see against each of the different platforms that we support, there's a list of operating systems that are supported. So it might be that the OS that you're running P4 on is no longer supported by P5, so check this, make sure that everything's okay for your installation. Next thing to think about is having performed the upgrade on your server to P5, you should check the client list. I don't have any clients set up on this installation, but any additional clients that you've added so that you can back those clients up and restore to them and archive and so on, they will need to be upgraded to this version too. So it might be possible to upgrade the clients directly from within this interface by clicking on them and clicking the upgrade button. If that fails, then you should download the installer again from the Archiware website for the platform that you're installing on. Run the installer locally. Once the installer's finished and the product starts back up, then you're good, and then you can come back here and just check by pinging each of the clients to make sure that that client is alive and is also showing that it's running 5.1, same version that you're running on your server. By the time you watch this, there may be a later version than 5.13 available. Now for a quick bit of technical stuff, so I'm going to go into the terminal. The way that the configuration of PressStore is upgraded works as follows. If you change direction to user local AW, which is where the product is installed, and do a listing of available files, you'll see there are two directories, one called conf, C-O-N-F, and one called config, C-O-N-I-F, C-O-N-F-I-G. So this folder was the one where all of the configuration for P4 and all of the archive and backup indexes lived, and this folder is not changed by the installation to P5, but P5 uses this config folder to store all of its configuration and indexes. So all of your settings are migrated across from one to the other when you upgrade. The new backup indexes are going to be stored in the config folder, in an index folder, and the archive indexes are effectively copied, or rather migrated, from this folder to this folder when you trigger that conversion within the web interface. So it is possible to downgrade back to P4, and because P4 doesn't read the config folder, it will read everything back as it was before the upgrade from the conf folder, C-O-N-F, and you'll basically see PressStore for P4 behaving as it did before you upgraded it. But bear in mind that if you've run any backups where the indexes have been written in here, then upon downgrading you'll have no visibility of those backups in the index, because effectively the indexes were closed and nothing would have changed since the upgrade. So it is possible, if you find yourself in a situation where it's necessary, to do a downgrade back to P4, but bear in mind that anything that you've done since upgrading will be lost. Another thing to bear in mind, if we just look into the conf folder, so I'm looking at the old folder and I'm interested in looking at the index folder. So under here you'll see the indexes for backup and archive. Now, because by default Archiware installs itself onto the system partition, some customers will find that they run out of space for large backup and archive indexes, and will have used symlinks on Mac and Linux OSs to relocate the indexes off to other storage. Perhaps there's a RAID attached or a storage network. So bear in mind that those symlinks are created under the conf folder, if that's how the installation has been configured, but you'll need to redo that linking of the storage under the config folder in order that your indexes for P5 are also stored on the RAID. So that's something that you might need to take care of. Now, the last thing I'm going to mention is there are some changes in the way that P5 works with backup indexes and how it decides whether to resave files and whether one backup is independent of another. And I'm going to point you to the upgrade FAQ for 5.1 from the Archiware website here, and this provides some information, most of which I think I've covered in this video, but I recommend that you read this P5 upgrade guide, which is actually a PDF file, and have a look at this, because this describes some of the changes that are occurring in the way the backup indexes work. I'm not going to go through this now, It's outside the scope of this video, which I want to keep fairly straightforward, but do make sure you read this PDF and avail yourselves of the differences. Some of the stuff in this PDF I've already mentioned, like symbolic linking of index directories and so on, but the first page is the one that you need to have a read of to see how the backup index stuff changes. This means that you might need to reconfigure your backup plans slightly to accommodate the changes. Okay, so thanks for watching this video about upgrading from P4 to P5.